In this episode of On Their Terms, I speak to Dave Katague. And if you don't know of Dave, you're about to find out, and you should. And we cover things such as how he landed clients like Uber and Amazon, and also how he taught himself AI to the point that he is the now go-to AI guy for some very well-known masterminds. And it's a conversation full of insights and stories and actionable strategies that will directly influence the way you think about problem solving and brand building, as well as business growth in the age of AI. So let's jump in. It's good to have you on.
Hello, everyone.
I actually had a bit of trouble trying to map out an intro for everything that is Dave. And I think initially videographer for some pretty massive names. And the biggest thing that caught my attention was just the impact that you've had on me, as well as some other pretty impressive masterminds by being the AI guy. And what you've taught me, what you teach other people is mind-blowing. I use it every day. But the other thing, and anyone that's come in contact with you, the one thing that they say across the board is as soon as they connect with you, you just value bomb right out of the gate. Just all of these things. It's just like, I still feel like I'm catching up to the things that you sent me even 3, 4, 5 months ago. A question for you.
Yep.
Take me back. How did this journey to everything that is Dave? How did that start? How did we end up here?
Oh, okay. So it's I think if we rewind back to when I was at uni, I think there's been signs of it kind of moving in this direction for quite a while. There was a point where the teacher said, what we need you to do, because in uni I was a graphic designer, I did visual communication. The teacher said, you need to focus on one thing, like get really good at one thing. And I was looking at everyone else and I was like, but can't you do 3 or 5 at once? And so I think ever since uni, the pace was always like pushing really hard to, but if I could just learn the 80-20, the Pareto principle, the 20% required to make it look like I'm 80% good. If I could just learn that in 3 things, then I can get really good really fast. So what happened during uni was everyone was told to specialize in one thing. And in the time I saw other people doing that, I was like, yeah, but I'm going to do like 3 to 5 at once. And so at the end of uni, there was one time the uni brought me back to talk to everyone and inspire them. And so I was the example of what to do after uni. And I think the teacher was telling me, he said, Dave, but during uni, your marks weren't really that good. And I said, why would you say that, Dan? My parents are here. So everyone started laughing. And then I said, but also, who's speaking right now? You brought me back.
Yeah.
So everything about all the different skill sets I learned, I feel that there's a way that we can push a little bit harder than what people expect of us. So I think if you can find things that are very similar to each other and then they cross-pollinate, and then there's some things and some foundations in one thing that help accelerate things on the left and right of that, I feel that you can actually do more than specialize in just one thing.
So that 80-20 rule, so instead of 100% on one thing, 60% across, in theory, across 3 things and excel. So you said cross-pollinating as well.
Yes.
Do you have an example of something where you've actually done that?
Yes.
Anything that comes to mind?
If we think about cross-pollination, going back to all the different skill sets that I learned, originally I wanted to be the best graphic designer and then have my own design studio and do branding. I was obsessed with fonts. I was obsessed with making things just look really good. And with design, I started to feel like something like Canva was coming. I just had a feeling something like Canva was coming. And so I thought, well, if I learn all these foundations, the photography stuff that everyone's doing, like that looks pretty cool. What if I was a designer and a photographer? And so I started learning photography in about 2nd or 3rd year during uni. And then I started to be a designer who knew photography. And so the cross-pollination of understanding design and composition and magazine layouts, because magazines have photography in it, when you become a photographer, you know how to incorporate the type and photo, and then they blend together.
Mm.
And so a lot of people in maybe third or fourth year, photography started becoming the thing where people just buy an SLR and then you're a photographer. And so same thing with design. I was like, oh, but if I learn photography, I thought that same thing with photography. Well, wait, there's that video thing over there. If I learn video as well, then I can be the designer, the photographer that knows video too. And so they start to stack on top of each other, and all of them start to give like different context to the other skill sets. So design helps photo helps with your design, but then when you're adding like video, you're actually using design and photo and making it happen over time. So that's when it started getting interesting.
All right, so I'm going to add in 3 more layers.
Yeah, sure.
You are nuts about human psychology.
Mm-hmm.
The same about sales.
Yes.
And then we've got AI on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen? How did we get there?
Oh, okay. So psychology, sales, and then AI. Okay, yeah. So I continued this trend of adding design, then photo. That's building up a ladder on your side, right? So design, then photo, then video. And when I did video, at the time, the university had the big shoulder cameras. And so there was no like little things that looked like cinematic and looked like movies back then. That's when I told the teachers, I'm going to do an ad for a company. I think it's been a long enough time I can say this story now. I reached out to a company and I told them, I will make you an ad. But the company didn't know I was still at uni. And then I told my uni, I'm going to do an ad for a company. And so I got paid to do my major assignment. So that's when I started understanding a little bit more about making a video that actually creates an outcome. And that's when I started falling in love with the power of what you can do with video. You can make it look cool, but if people watch it, can you actually get people to want to buy it? And so the design, photo, video, but then I started moving into filming events and getting videos to actually move thoughts into the audience's mind so they actually buy, or it elicits a behavior. And so I kept stacking more and more things. And so I did weddings for 4 years. And then after weddings, because weddings taught me so much about psychology, about reading the room, about like understanding people's micro expressions, I got to a point where I could see who in the room was going to cry before the tears came out. So I got to such a crazy level of just having hyper awareness of like seeing people. And I have a story about that, which we might talk about a bit later. But when I got that to that level of hyper awareness, it started making me realize that we can do way more with video. You can make people cry, you can get them motivated, you can move them towards a sale. And so originally during the weddings, I just really wanted to make people cry, like happy cry. But then after weddings, it moved into a bit more towards psychology based stuff. So after the weddings, I wanted to move on from weddings. And so I went and started my own thing. And then I reached out I saw on the news there was a company called Uber. And I said, oh, that's that thing in America. I need to get them. And so I emailed Uber every week for 3 months to try and get on their radar.
Yeah.
And then I got them as a client. So I went to an event. I used my knowledge from doing same-day edits and filming, and I just really wanted to impress them. So this was the first time going out and proving it. I did an interview with 13 taxi drivers, and then I did a same-day edit, and I gave it to Uber an hour after the event finished.
Yep.
So I really wanted to impress them. So we did that, and then they were very impressed, and then they actually said, we don't have budget for video, because at the time, video wasn't as big as it is now. And so they said, but would you be interested in doing more work like this? And so that started 4 years of me doing all the videos for Uber, Uber Eats, Uber in Southeast Asia. And I went all through and I did so many different things. It was baptism by fire to do video, but across all the different things that Uber was doing for the first 4 years. So that's when I learned so much about marketing.
See, I find it really interesting. You mentioned Canva before, and
Yes.
something I learned, I don't know how true this is,
Mhm.
but allegedly the designer of Canva, she went to 100 and something
Mhm.
companies to invest in Canva, and they
Mhm.
all fobbed her off. They all
Mhm.
said, no, not interested. This will never take off.
Mhm.
And now it's massive, all because of that persistence. So your version of that is
Mhm.
emailing Uber
Yes.
every week for a few months, and ultimately it ended up in that massive contract.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
So that's Melanie, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I think the difference between persistence and annoyance is when you have what they need,
Mm.
when you have value
The
that they
difference
need.
between persistence and annoyance is when you have what they need.
Yes. And no means not now.
Interesting. I've never heard that expression before, but I
I made it
think
up.
okay, you got me. I think that could be applied to a lot of things, though. I think it
Yeah.
could. I mean, obviously, sales, that's my forte.
Mhm.
I think there is a big difference between persistence and annoyance, and most salespeople end up on the absolute wrong side of things.
Mhm. Mhm.
But do you feel as though you inherently always had that balance, or is that something that you learned?
Oh, I learned it over time because I think there was points where it was annoyance, but then I started to try and zoom out and go, I question, why is this not working?
Mm,
What am I doing? How is this being perceived on the other side? And what can I do? So what I would do is I'd take myself out of my body and I'd look at the messages I'd send to them. So when Uber wasn't replying, I'm like, did I say something wrong? Maybe I wasn't doing it right. And so what I actually started doing was I recognized that something called fundamental attribution error, which is when you
okay.
look at something, like sometimes people attribute specific traits to an action towards a character, but usually it's not even about you. It's about, like, there's so many things external, like they could be not reading their email properly, it could be a loud environment, they just
Mm,
swipe past. If you think about how you read emails, I just shift delete like 40 at once.
yeah,
So when we're trying to do our cold outreach, they're
yeah.
like, oh, they didn't read my email. Well, how many times did you send it?
Mm,
Because you're probably
yep.
in that, I don't know who that person is, bam, gone. So that's why part of me tries to perceive the other side and how would they be experiencing this? And how
Mm.
can I create a signal in the noise when everyone else is doing the same thing?
So it's interesting you say that. So
Mhm.
anyone that I work with and they have a dream company, and I
Mhm.
always say don't limit it to just one dream company because it takes a good amount of time to land it. And my strategy is very much around multifaceted, multi-channel attempts. So
Mhm.
the first is figure out where they're most active, and you comment. And my take, I always say, is they're going to miss the first comment. They will miss the 10th. They're going to notice the 50th, and they're going to expect the 100th. So if you are persistent, consistently on everything they do, engage with them, send them a DM once they're familiar, as in they'll recognize that name. Don't have any asks. There is that gap between persistence and annoyance, and I think that's the balance. And I think most people, it's very much like people that don't want to go to the gym but know that they should. It's very much tick that box, as in, oh, I checked it out, or oh, I did this, it didn't happen for this reason. You send one message, oh, it didn't work, I'll give up.
Mhm.
You didn't do that.
Yeah, I just keep
Yeah.
going because I think I did Uber, and then at the end of Uber, on this exact same wall here, 2018, I was like, I want to do something harder, something
Oh, so you
scarier.
got Uber before 2018?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
was working with Uber when there was only 3 employees in Australia.
Whoa.
I was back at the very OG days,
Yep.
and so I know, like, the general manager, like I know everyone who was in the first team, all the way up to, so 4 years, and then 2018, I was like, I want to do something with all the skill set that I learned from Uber. How can I use this?
Mm.
And so, right in front of here, I should have filmed doing it. I stuck paper to the wall, and I drew the Amazon logo.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I
Okay.
was like, I could have. Am I allowed to swear on this?
You can go hard. Say whatever you
Okay.
want.
As soon as I wrote it, I was like, shit, I could have done something easier. But then I said, no, you already wrote it. So I went through this process in my head. Okay, well, Amazon, how can I get them? And then I went back through everything I'd done to get Uber, and I said, okay, well, you emailed Uber every week for 3 months. What else can I do? Because when everyone says, oh, I've tried everything. If you get a piece of paper and you write down everything you've tried, you've done like 3 things. And 3 of those are probably going to get deleted because they're just cold outreach.
Yep.
So what I did was I said, okay, well, what is every single thing I can possibly do to get on the radar of Amazon? So I went on their website, I went on all of their social media, I added everyone possible on LinkedIn, I visited their headquarters, I did I think 14 different things just to be seen by someone. And 14 days later, so that was January 1st.
Wait, you did that. Do you mean 14 days? As in 2 weeks later?
2 weeks later, yes.
Yeah, that's a lot quicker than 3 months.
Yeah, so because I knew that Uber was only in its infancy stages, so there was only 3 people at that time, but Amazon was a little bit further than that. I was like, I need to do, and time has changed now. Like, tech is a little bit more advanced, things are moving faster. I need to do more than I did with Uber, because Amazon had been here for already a year. So then I was like, okay, well, we have to ramp it up. We have to do more. So I did 14 things more. And then, so January 1st, 2018, on the 14th of January, someone messaged me and said, can you come into the office and we have a question for you. So I went into the office and they said, have you heard what the Amazon Echo is? Which is the Alexa device. Yeah, I needed to not say a request, otherwise she'd talk. So they asked me, can you film? Do you know what the Alexa is first? And then they said, would you be interested in filming the launch of this in Australia?
Oh, yep.
So I did the videos for when the Echo came to Australia.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, no one does.
Surprise. Surprise. So 14 days, you made the decision, I want to work with Amazon.
Yes.
14 different things, you get called in, and then because of that, you get to launch the Echo in Australia.
Yes. So I filmed the videos that was all over the news, and then I worked with the Echo team in Australia and New Zealand, and then they were so happy with everything we did. 6 months later, I did the launch of Amazon Prime in Australia, and I was in one of the first fulfillment centers in Australia, and over there I have one of the first Amazon boxes in Australia. I asked if I could keep it.
Amazon boxes?
The ones that everyone gets with deliveries. We got a box and we filmed it as a prop, and I kept it this whole time. It's kind of what everyone thinks is rubbish, but yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So when you say Amazon Prime, do you mean the delivery service or do you mean the film service?
It was, so when you pay for Amazon Prime, you get the film service as well, but it was the get things at the time in 2 days or 1 day, which is, and then there's go. So the launch of Amazon Prime was the delivery service. It was for the Kindle. It was for the Prime Reading, and it was for Twitch Prime. So it was 4 of the things at once.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Uber, we've got Amazon. All because you were persistent, not annoying. What came after that? How do you top Uber and Amazon? Or at least, hang on, let me rephrase that. How do you, in the life that you want to lead, make the next step after that? Is it more relaxed with a smaller company working on projects that you absolutely love? Or was there another thing that came after that that was as large?
I think this is where I got to the point where I was like, oh, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to keep jumping higher. And then something happened that made the world not need video for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
But just before that happened, I was actually traveling quite a lot. And I was just playing a game every now and then. So this might be quite interesting for some people. My friend said to me that he found a deal where you could go to Hong Kong and America and London for like $1,500 or $2,000.
Right.
And I said, really? Because he works at Flight Center, and at the time it was just this crazy deal. And I said, how far apart can the flights be? And he said, oh, you can do whatever you want. You can pay and then just move them far away. And so I said, okay, well, I'm just going to go for 7 weeks. So this was before COVID. This is before all that. And so it was to see my girlfriend in London. And I made a little game where in every country, I was like, let's see what I can do. And so I booked all of it, but I didn't book any hotels.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I
think I already know where this is going.
I wanted to play a game where I brought like the priority for this whole thing was to just bring my camera gear because I just wanted to travel and film. And so I got to Hong Kong, and I haven't said this story in a while, but this one's one of my favorite ones. I pulled my phone out, I put a SIM card in, and then I was like, where is everything here? So I went to Hong Kong with no plan at all, and I had about a week and a half to be in Hong Kong, do whatever I want. So I said, okay, let's choose a hotel. So went to hotels.com, and I said, this is my trip. I can do whatever I want. So I said, hotels, 5-star only. And then I looked at the prices. I was like, 4-star. I was like, oh, I'm going to be here. I'm traveling for 7 weeks, maybe not 5-star. But then I changed my mind. I said, no, let's stay in 5-star because what kind of things I film, you will attract more of. But let's start from the bottom and move up then. So what I did was I stayed in one hotel. I just chose the lowest 5-star one just for two nights. And when I got there, I was like, oh, this looks really good still. So I went to the counter and I said, hi, my name's Dave. I've got camera gear and stuff like that. Was it possible if I film something for you? And then they were kind of a bit standoffish. And I said, it's okay. How about I just do it first and then I'll show you afterwards. So went into the room, put all my stuff away, and then I just filmed a little video. Then after the first day, the second day, I said, oh, can I show something to the marketing team? So I showed the marketing team. They came out and had a look, and they were very impressed. And I said, oh, maybe this can turn into a thing. So I showed my friend, her name's Lisa, and she said, why don't you change every day? Go to a new hotel every day and film it. And I was like, oh, man, then this won't be a holiday anymore. And I remember looking at my face in the mirror, and I said, but if you do what everyone else is doing, you'll get what everyone else is getting. And I go, all right, I'm going to try and film every hotel I stay in, just for fun. And so for 7 weeks, I went to a new hotel. I booked the worst possible room, and then I would talk to the reception, and I upgraded every room for 7 weeks. So worst room, upgraded to the best room, filmed it, and then I started building an Excel spreadsheet of all of the marketing managers for every hotel.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the whole thing, one of the hotels brought me back to Hong Kong, and I did a gigantic campaign for them.
So you were having a holiday, but not having a holiday, doing lead gen and building collateral at the same time. Yes.
And so now I've filmed in over 75 hotels in 15 different countries, all 5-star. Hilton, Shangri-La, Ritz-Carlton in several different countries. So at the same time as the Uber and Amazon thing, I've also filmed 5-star luxury hotels for fun.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So that gets your travel sorted as well. So you've gone and seen a heap of places, stayed in some absolutely amazing places as well, which would definitely make traveling a little bit harder after that.
Yes.
So walk me through, how does AI come into this? Because if anyone ever asks me about AI, I just say Dave's the guy. He's the guy. Mm-hmm. But how did that come about? Because you, and I'm not just saying this, anyone that knows you will say exactly this. You are so far ahead with AI by a landslide that anyone I've come across. And what you've taught me, and I know I'm still an infant with what you've taught me, and I'm still so far behind. I use it every day, and it saves me probably 2 to 4 hours of work every day. But how did you go from filming Uber to Amazon to hotels and then to just whatever this is now.
Ooh, okay. So there's a bridge that will jump over a couple of things, which will connect all of it together. Right after the hotels thing, did Amazon, and then the thing happened that changed the world. During that time, video kind of dropped off a cliff, and so it forced me to go into like reflective mode. What am I doing? Like, I love psychology, I love sales, but I can't even film anymore. What do I do? And so I got very acquainted with this place, like sitting in front of this computer and all that kind of stuff. And one of my friends, he's a very close friend, I helped him at one point do some videos for his business. His name's Nuggin. And we were talking one time as I was filming videos for his health facility. He has he has float tanks. He's got infrared sauna, cryo. Love him. He's awesome. We were talking and he was showing me something. We were talking about psychology and he said, "Have you heard of NLP?" And I was like, "Oh, I like that. I did Anthony Robbins when I was young." We might go back to that if you want. So we're talking about NLP and I was like, "Oh, it's so cool." I learned a little bit. And then he's so generous that he said, "Oh, I want to show you something, but maybe later." So what we did was we finished all of the marketing for his business and I helped him with the website and everything. And at the end of the whole thing, I just did it because he's a really good guy. At the end, he said, "Hey, I didn't want to tell you yet, but I actually bought you something." And it is one of the most generous gifts I've ever received. And I think it has changed my life. He bought me a 4-day NLP practitioner course. Oh my gosh. And it was over $4,000, if I'm allowed to say it. And so I was like, I have never received a gift like this to this level. I was like, I am going to be the best. I'm going to make the most of this whole thing. I'm going to really make the most of this. And so I met his teacher. So it's the person who taught him NLP. His name's Gordon Young. And so during COVID, I was lucky enough to do an NLP master practitioner, the first part of it. And so as soon as I was there, I was like so open. I was absorbing everything. And as soon as I saw a glimpse of the other things Gordon taught, I was like, I want all of this.
Yeah. So what were the other things that you saw just before we go on?
Sure. So what Gordon teaches, he learned at several different places. He went to the Milton Erickson Foundation. Gordon actually runs a place called the Institute of Applied Psychology. So he had other things in his syllabus. So the NLP Master Practitioner, which is the basics of NLP. He had the Strategic Coach, which is how to be a coach. And then there was the Facilitator, which is how to speak on stage. And then separate to that, there was 2 others, which were quite on the pricier side because they're so good. There is the Strategic Psychotherapist and then Clinical Hypnotherapy. And the second I saw what those were, I was like, well, I'm not doing anything. And so I talked to Gordon and I said, man, the stuff you're teaching in this, like everyone's stuck at home. We're all getting lost in our thoughts. And you just taught all of us how we can control our inner, like our critical voice, our limiting beliefs, our critical voice. And so I said, if there's a way you can get this in front of people right now, before everyone gets like kind of cooked in lockdown, like I will do anything it takes to help. I didn't actually want anything at the time as well. I was like, if there's a way I can somehow learn the other stuff just by like maybe filming or something for him. And so I said, for a week, anything you want to do, I will film it for free if we can get this in the hands of people. So I led with not me getting something. I led with everyone else during COVID getting something. And so for a week, I filmed for Gordon and he said to me, it's weird. A lot of camera people, they kind of just are on their phone and stuff when I'm talking about all this. And so we were sitting there and we were editing. And then he was actually just saying, oh, can we put like a title there? And I was like, oh, yeah, because it's this. And then I just started like rattling off a couple of things. And he said, wait, what do you mean? And I guess, oh, that's intolerance for ambiguity. And so I started mapping out all of the things he was saying. And he said, wait, were you taking notes? I said, Yeah, I actually just started learning.
Yeah.
And so he was so impressed with it that he said, you know what? As my gift to you, and because of what you're doing, you can attend what I teach. Like,
So you got all of the courses, and the opportunity cost was a week of time where you weren't doing too much anyway.
yeah, I was learning and I was helping him with the course content, and we're still great friends. Like Gordon is
Yep.
amazing.
But I
And
think
so
that sums you up, as in just give right out of the gate. And I
yes.
think that's the reason you have managed to get behind these doors. And even
Mhm,
people that I didn't know that knew you will send me a
mhm,
message and they say, "Who the hell is this Dave guy? What? What? He sent me a dozen Miller notes and all of this sort of stuff already. Who is he?" That
mhm,
story is the perfect summary of you. Just give, and
mhm,
absolutely you receive. So you go through, you do his recording, you go through his courses.
mhm,
Yeah. What for you was if you had to, this is a tough
mhm.
question because I know how much
Sure.
you love the courses. If you had to
Yeah.
break it down,
Mhm,
what do you think was the main takeaway for you from those NLP? Well, they're not just NLP courses, from
mm.
his collection of courses that,
Whoa. Mhm,
yeah, that
mhm.
you could carry forwards.
It felt like I was learning an entirely new operating system for everything I was doing. So when
Mm.
I learned all of this, like the different like methods of persuasion, and there's like sleight of mouth, um, and then also the psychotherapy, which is how to control a bit more about our thoughts and understand how our brain works. It started reframing and shifting my entire perception of how am I doing video. And so I think one of the larger things that I took away from the whole course is when you're doing hypnotherapy, which is just guiding people through specific thought processes. I looked back at video and I was like, wait, everything I'm doing with video is actually just moving people through a specific series of thoughts. But instead of with hypnotherapy, it's using voice. Because I'm a photographer, designer, and video guy, I'm actually controlling what people are paying attention and their focus is on. So I'm actually moving thoughts into people's mind. And so it actually shifted how I perceive what I'm doing with video. It's not just making cool shots, it's actually taking people on a specific and intentional journey to move them through a sequence of beliefs.
Okay, say that bit again.
That one's pretty full on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I think
you're using video to move
mhm.
people through a series of events that will, did you say will adjust their beliefs or?
you it's actually moving them through a series of thought processes
Mhm.
that, for example, in a movie where the good guy sacrifices himself and it feels like a big moment, if you show that before we even know who the character is, it doesn't mean anything, right?
Mm.
So what we're
Yep.
doing is we're actually showing people, because you haven't earned that moment. So what I figured out is we can actually move people to start caring about things. Like you have a sequence of different thought processes that you are moving them through intentionally to get them to a moment, to a feeling, to an outcome.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think when people try and use video but they don't have an intention and they don't know what they're trying to get people to feel, you don't have a bullseye. You don't have a bullseye, so you're not going to hit an outcome. So everything that I learned from all the psychotherapy and all of the NLP stuff is we can actually control, to an extent, what we're getting people to think and believe, but we have to use it ethically.
Should.
Yes. Mm-hmm,
Should.
mm-hmm,
Uh, okay, and that what you've just explained to me then with regards to in a movie scene, if you just have that big moment straight out of the
mm-hmm.
gate, you will
Yeah.
feel nothing because it's just
Yeah.
someone doing something on a screen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So you've applied that, you went through.
mm-hmm,
Okay, okay. So how did you make that bridge to AI?
mm-hmm. So
How did that start?
just to, I think the interesting part about different ways of thinking as well, like what I learned from NLP specifically, is lateral thinking. Like I
Mhm.
learned systems for understanding how to think laterally, and I had that from a younger age. Like, how can we get to this outcome, but do it in a different way. And then
Mm.
in the NLP, I actually learned how to repeat it, how to do it in a systematic process. So it's very important that when we approach AI, we use all of these different decision-making frameworks, lateral thinking, systems thinking, design thinking, and I learned a lot of that from the NLP. So when everything started to open up a little bit more after COVID, that's when I saw ChatGPT. And so it's so interesting because during COVID, I was collecting all my resources. So at the same time, this is pretty important as well. When COVID happened, I had all this reflection. I was learning all this NLP stuff. And I got to a point, I'm like, what am I going to do with my life if I can't film anymore? And I go, but I learned all these different things. I learned the 80-20 of everything. And then I was like, but it's useful for people. What if I get all of it out of my brain then? Let's just make this my project for COVID. And so this is when I found an app called Milanote.
Yeah.
And that's where it started.
Yeah.
So I found Milanote and I was like, oh, what is this? This is just another one of those Evernote things. And so I wish I filmed the first time I used it because I just dragged one thing into the board. I was like, oh, so you can just see where it is. And so I dragged a video file onto it. I'm like, oh, it plays inside it. And so after 10 minutes, I was like, I can put my whole life into this thing. So in the first few moments of using it, I started playing around with it for a little bit. And then fast forward a couple of months, I put everything I knew into it. And I didn't know why I was doing it. Let's just put everything, like all thought processes, all design, all storytelling, characters, like persuasion, like putting all these frameworks in here. And I spent probably a year doing it. I had no idea why I was doing any of it. But then there was a moment where I started sharing it with people and people were saying, don't do this. You shouldn't share all of this. And there was a moment where I decided, oh, maybe I should keep this because it's my magnum opus. Maybe I should just keep it. And then I thought, who cares? Just show it. If they copy it, then you're just not good enough.
Yeah.
So I started sharing the really big ones. And I think that's probably the best thing I could have done. Because when I shared the really big stuff that had NLP and all these different things, like all of the frameworks, the structures, the foundations, I gave it. It made me so scared that I was like, I need to find more than this. So I gave away the big stuff. And if I hadn't done that, I would have stayed in that spot. But because I gave it away, it made me make about 30 more boards of equal, of equal impact, of equal quality, of equal like insights and like mind-blowing things. And so now I've made so many boards that are so crazy that it wouldn't have happened if I didn't give away the first one.
And I think that goes into, you see a lot of creators now saying, give away as much as you possibly can, because even though you what is it? You give away the insights, you don't give away the implementation. And I can think of everything that you've sent me. I can't remember so much of what you sent me, but every time I go through it, it's just mind blowing that all of that content can be in one place. I apply it and then it's gone and I have to go back and go through it again. So by actually doing that, you force yourself to do more, give away more, knowing that no one can ever consume or utilize that sheer amount of information. And you just use it as an external mechanism for you to push to be better.
Yes. Like putting everything into a spot. Because before I'd put it in Evernote or press a button and go, here, I'll never read that ever again. But then Milanote started to become a place in my head. Like the different boards, because I'd place it in a specific order with frameworks, hierarchy, and it was very visual. I can close my eyes and I can see every board that I made and where everything is. So it got to a point where I built a second brain where I can find any video I've ever watched within less than 10 seconds. I know exactly where everything is. And so I didn't know why I was doing this.
Yeah.
But then when ChatGPT came out, I was doing collecting, and everyone was like, "What are you doing? Like, don't you think it's analysis paralysis, or there's the mental masturbation thing? You're just constantly learning." And so I didn't have an answer for it until ChatGPT came out. And then when Chat came out, I was like, "Hey, everything I collected, I can now fully break it down, and I've got it now."
Mm, gotcha. So you by doing all of that work ahead of time, you had all of the resources, information, and ChatGPT gave you a mechanism to distill it down in such a way that you can utilize it properly.
Yes. 2 years of being in lockdown, just randomly collecting everything, organizing it. And by playing around and putting them next to each other and then making frameworks, it
Were
made
you in
my brain
Sydney
start.
or Melbourne during the lockdown?
This was in Sydney, but we
Yeah.
still weren't really allowed to film. And so
Yeah.
that's what happened with Milanote. Milanote is based in Melbourne. And I messaged them during lockdown, and we could still sort of film in Sydney. So I
Yeah.
said to Milanote, "Can I make an ad for you while we can at least film?" And so I made an ad for them, and they were so happy with it. They gave me Milanote for the rest of my life because I asked
That
for it.
sounds to be the story, again, the story of your life. Just give, and you receive so much more. Well, arguably, not so much more in return. Okay, so I remember using the first version of ChatGPT I was familiar with, and it
Yes.
is not what it was now. So how did you, or how do you manage to stay ahead of the curve? Because everything you show me is nuts, but
Yeah.
how do you keep so far ahead of everyone else?
Ooh, okay. So I think when I first used ChatGPT, it was really not impressive like it is now.
Yeah.
I wish I recorded my face when I was using it. I was like, "What?"
And he uses words like delve and uncover and all of that sort
Yeah.
of stuff. Just the same language. Person didn't write
I,
this.
I should actually go back eventually and like look at the first chat, because you still have the first thing you ever typed.
Yeah.
But I remember using it the first time, and I was like, "Oh, it's pretty good, I guess." And it didn't really phase me much. I was like, "Oh, it's just kind of like a sort of like the mini chat or one of those chatting kind of things." It wasn't really getting anything that was very interesting to me. And so I just kept playing around with it, and I go, "Oh, maybe it might get good eventually." So I kept playing around with it. But then there was a point where it connected to the internet. And I was like, "Oh, okay. If it can do that, then maybe the answers won't suck so much."
Yep.
And so it started getting a little bit better. And then I I think I started playing around with just the prompts. And the more I practiced with it, it's like a kind of dance between what is the cause, which is your prompt or your question, and what is the effect. And so I started looking at a lot of the things I was doing. I'm like, it's not getting what I want. But then I would look at what I said to it, and I would question, well, what did I do for it to not come up with the right thing? So I looked at my prompting and I was like, well, even though it's not as sophisticated, how can I change what I'm doing so it makes what I want? And so I started playing with it every single day. Like, oh, if I change this word, if I change that word. And so I think for a year and a half, I used it every single day. Just to like see what's going on. I'm like, oh, and then it started getting really good. And so I started following Matt Wolf, Riley Brown, and I think it's David Shapiro. I followed those three on YouTube. They just talk, and Matt Farmer. They talk a lot about all the technologies that keep coming out. And so one of the big things is a lot of people get so overwhelmed with, oh, there's a new tool, there's this, there's that. But whilst you can get like obsessed with all those things, I think we need to remember what are the things that will stay the same. So there's a story from Jeff Walker, and this is when I started reading Launch and all the direct response stuff. And people said to Jeff Walker, so what's the best thing that we can use right now? And Jeff said, oh, I've been doing this ever since he started creating all the online launches. He said, I was doing audio cassette tapes, the coaching. Then he's like, we're doing webinars, and then we're doing all these things. Every single thing, he goes, you can focus on the next cool thing, But the better question to ask is, what are the things that have always stayed the same? And that's human behavior, psychology, using sequences to warm up an audience, using story and persuasive triggers. He said those three things. So story, persuasive triggers, and understanding six principles of persuasion from Cialdini, and then sequences, which is the slow reveal of information over time. Doesn't matter what the medium is, it's those three things. And so I remember hearing that from Jeff. And then when I was watching all these people get obsessed with, oh, this does photos now, this does this, I'm like, but what's the thing that we should be focusing on that will probably stay the same? And it's using chat. Because if you can understand how to play around with chat to get an outcome, that actually translates to all of the other ones anyway, like using prompting and stuff like that.
So when you say when you say sequences, so my understanding on what you mean when you say sequences. So I view any chat, whether that's ChatGPT or Claude, as you know, my favorite.
Yes.
Thank you. You're taking that AI by the hand and leading it down a path, and you're following a set of processes. So you don't go all within one prompt, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. Whereas I think it is an incredibly, incredibly smart person that thinks in ones and zeros. They think in absolutes, do this, and then critique your work. So when I use it, I ask it to analyze the work and focus on these key areas, and then apply this filter, this film, this question. Okay, so based on those, I want you to think like this and do this. Yeah. Now that you've got that, what is the next layer beyond that, and what would the symptoms of that be? And then following that, what questions would you ask? Or, you know, put yourself in the shoes of this, knowing this, keeping in mind everything that we've already done, as well as this. What questions would you ask? How would it position? How would it show up in someone's life? That's my understanding of the sequence. Is that what you meant? Or have I misread that?
It's very important to understand, like, that's prompt chaining and that's the sequence. And in a way, what Jeff was referring to is when we do persuasion, it's showing one thing over time, which is kind of the same thing. We're kind of prompting the audience to want to buy. And so it is just moving people through a sequence of things, moving them across the awareness from not knowing to understanding and being like understanding the problem and then knowing there's a solution. So what Jeff was referring to with sequences is just showing one thing over time, the slow reveal of information over time through a sales letter, through an email chain. But it's actually very similar to when we do prompting.
I remember the first thing you showed me, and it was, this is what just blew my mind. And you took one of the most popular pieces of copy from history. And I think it was you remember the one I'm telling you about?
Yes, the lazy man's way to riches.
That's it. That's it. And you asked AI to pull it apart, take all of the information out of there, map out exactly why it was successful, all of the copy techniques, and you put everything in a framework. And then this was the moment for me. And then you took all of those tools, resources, methods, everything that was used in that piece of copy, and then you took something else, a completely separate company, piece of information, whatever it was, and said, now keep all of that in mind and rewrite this. And it did it so flawlessly, and I'd never seen AI applied like that. I didn't even know it could, because everyone's just saying, please summarize this, or please give me a high level explanation of this, or pretend you're a financial planner. What would I do here? You followed that sequence. It did it so well. And then that was the realization of, we are living in a very different age if we choose to.
Yes.
So,
I think when I started playing with it to this level, like even what you're saying now, there's people who teach tutorials and they show how they do things. And I looked at all that, I'm like, yeah, I've done that already because I played with it every day. But what if I just don't do any of that? And so that's when it started making weird experiments like this. So I think some of the approach that some people have towards AI is they're scared to break it. They're like, oh, if I try this, it's not going to work. But it's like you're learning how to ride a bike, but instead of you fully falling over, you're just standing, you're just up again. So
Just
you don't
start a
get
new
hurt.
chat and you're
Yeah,
safe.
just start again within 1 second. That's all we
Yep.
really need to do, because there's no loss. You don't look stupid. No one's even seeing what you're typing. So um, Alan says that we need to like close our feedback cycles. Alan Sultanich. So I think if we can figure out how we can close our feedback cycles as close as possible, then we'll be able to get feedback quicker. And so even though I'm not working when I'm doing chat with other people, I'm like, how can I fix this within 1 second? And you can, because chat types so quickly. So even though I'm playing and experimenting with prompting every day, I'm maxing out Chat GPT every single day. Because I was like, oh, well, if it breaks, well, then how can I do it? How can I get it to do that outcome? And so a lot of people approach it and they go, oh, it just doesn't work. And I go, well, if you don't question the way that you're prompting to get a different outcome, or you keep playing around with it to get a different variation, then you're not going to get much further in your understanding. So I've just been playing around with it until it gets to a feeling.
I
I
think
start to understand chat.
what you said before about it not working, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's one distinction. A lot of people are very quick to jump to it doesn't work.
Yep.
And it is not just in this area, and it's not just in sales. I have so many visions of my jiu-jitsu coach when I'm like, I don't think it'll work for me. He's like, no. The
Mm-hmm.
difference is there is a big difference between it doesn't work and I don't know how to do it yet.
Mm-hmm.
There is a
Yes. Ooh,
very
very
big
good.
distinction. Yeah. And you push through that. So
Mm-hmm.
you get it to the point now where you get it to a feeling.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So what it means with the feeling is when I experiment with ChatGPT and I know all the things it can't do. So I keep doing it till it breaks, but then because I've experimented with so many times and I try different words, for me it's becoming intuition for writing prompts, because I just keep writing and I go, well, if I write that, last time the table fell apart or that didn't work. So it's becoming a feeling for me. And then every time the model changes, it starts to shift a little bit. But the more we practice, the more we play around with the tools, the more we will understand. It's almost like a language or it's like a different accent. So it's still English, but with Claude, it's tiny. It's still English, but it's tiny bit different. And then with ChatGPT, it'll still do it, but tiny bit different in certain things. So, for example, Claude is very good at psychology. It's very good at understanding emotion. It writes very well. But if I put those same prompts in each of them, I kind of have a feeling and an intuition for, I know that Claude will be a bit more rhythmic, a bit more smooth sounding. It will sound a lot nicer to where I want to get it. Whereas with ChatGPT, the feeling and my intuition is I use ChatGPT more for planning and strategy and mapping out things. And when it's done, then I move it to Claude to express it. So I strategize with chat, and then I create a bit more with Claude.
That's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love Claude. I go
Mm-hmm.
straight there, but I'd never heard that distinction. But for anyone watching this and they were thinking, how do I get started, or what is the start point for me with AI? Because
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely believe, and a company I worked with, and you and I have spoken about this, the owner of
Mm-hmm.
that, he said, you will not be replaced by AI. You will be replaced by someone who is using AI. And I
Mm-hmm.
genuinely think, a lot of people were nervous about Neuralink and how there is going to be a different class of people, is probably not the right expression, but I can't think of anything better. I
Mm-hmm.
think those utilizing AI are
Mm-hmm.
going to be exponentially further along than those who are not. So how would
Mm-hmm.
anyone at the moment
Mm-hmm.
get started? And then after that, we're going to talk about where you see the applications going. But for
Sure.
now, how would
Yeah.
someone start?
So to get started with chat, with AI, a lot of people say you need to learn all of the maths and all that kind of stuff. And I think we don't need to overwhelm ourselves with all of these, like all these people telling you what to do. I think the easiest thing that you could do is just master Chat GPT. You don't have to do Claude. You don't have to do all these like Mid-Journey and all these different things. Just focus on, you don't have to master, but just focus on getting your foundations right for getting ChatGPT to do some basic functions.
Mm-hmm.
So you can
So can you give a
Mhm.
couple of examples potentially?
Sure. Yes. So in the next few days, ChatGPT is going to be released and be a bit more open to people, where you can get some of the features that Plus used to have. So I think if you start experimenting with starting to use chat a little bit more like Google, just playing around with it, getting it to read websites, just start with like asking it facts and getting it to write basic things. And then you'll start to just be playful, be curious, and just see what you can do. Just imagine. Don't worry about any rules. So, this is one of the biggest things for me when I was playing with all this stuff. I don't care what people say it can't do. I ask in my head, but what if it could? What if it could do it? And then if it could, what would I need to say for it to do it? And then I just type it anyway. So I would suggest just playing around with just doing basic things with chat. I think being wary of the 1,000 prompt sets, like all of those things where they sell, this is all of the best 100,000 prompts, all those different things. I think those things are a little bit toxic and poisonous to learning how to write them yourself, because when you get very good at being able to articulate what you want, then you'll be able to jump between not only chat, but you can go to Claude. So the two biggest skills in AI that I would recommend us having is, number one, getting very good at being able to see what you want in your head, in your mind's eye. I want it to show me an Excel spreadsheet of all of the best restaurants in Berlin. Just show me a table of that. So you can see it in your head. And then so we need to get very clear of what we want, see it very clearly in your mind's eye. And then the second skill is, how can I clearly articulate that to ChatGPT or Claude? Just get very clear on how can I want this. How can I write it so it knows what I want to?
So my version of that, how I use it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the way I view it, so Claude is another chatbot, just for anyone that didn't know. And the benefit of Claude is you can dump so much data in there, just hundreds, thousands of lines of data, whereas you can't get it to look at a website. So ChatGPT, you can get it to look at a website, but you can't copy as much data in. So how I use Claude, for example, if I've ever gone through a training or a mastermind program or anything like that, I will transcribe it. You were using Whisper. Thank you. I was using a different program. Whisper changed over recently, and I'll copy it all in there. And it's very much what you told me to do. So go through, analyze all of the information, and then write out very clearly, so that anyone who wasn't there is able to see a framework of exactly what was covered in this program. So make sure you put the headings in bold, subheadings underneath, and then I add, give me some examples and some quotes and basically things under that. And I say at the end, remember, be as thorough as you possibly can be, because anyone that reads this who wasn't there should have a 100% clear understanding of what was covered. And then what will happen is it will give me something that's 95% of the way there. And I'll say to it now, either Claude, add 15%, but be very concise, or Claude, do you feel as though anything was left out? And then every time Claude's like, yes, actually, you're right. I've left this out. And then that's the one that's on the money. And I just copy that into Notion. So any training I've ever been through, that's how I use it. Now, I know that is the kiddie pool for you compared to what you use and the kind of things that you're doing on ChatGPT. So if you could see an application just for an everyday Joe, average Joe, what would that be? And then big picture, where do you see AI as an application moving forwards?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to think of what is going to be the most useful. And I think building a second brain is probably the best thing I've ever done in my whole life.
Yeah.
And so to give some building blocks and what that means, anything I've ever read that I found useful, and it takes some time to build this, but it's worth it. Anything you've ever read, any PDFs, anything that you've bought, like all these different things, if you use Milanote or a note-taking app or like Notes on Apple, if you start to organize all of your thoughts, your ideas, your concepts, and all your knowledge so you can quickly access it, it will change your whole life. It will. It takes a lot of time, and sometimes it takes time to move between Evernote to another one. So I think the first thing that I would get people to do is focus on what is your learning style. How do you like to absorb information? What do you like to do? So I'm very visual, so I like using Milanote. Some people like writing a lot, so they can use Evernote. The syncing is a bit interesting right now. Some people like Notion, which is a bit of databasey. It's a bit more graphic. It's more for coders and stuff like that. And then there's some ones like Obsidian and stuff like that. And so if we can figure out first what our learning style is and how we like to consume information, then you choose the platform that best suits that. And once you start to use that, like try to put and organize all of your things, that's when you can start using AI to supercharge that part. So,
okay.
for example, once you start to build your second brain, because I have 3 brains. I have my squishy organic brain. I have my second brain, which is an insane bookshelf where I can have access to any of the books within seconds. I know where a lot of the different insights and concepts are in different books because I bookmarked it. So there's the physical bookshelf, second brain, but then the third one is digital. So I have a third brain, or my digital second brain. And so that is where I get everything that's organized. Like AI is going to get very advanced with helping you build a second brain. But if people can start doing that, because before COVID, I didn't have a second brain. I just put things randomly in folders, and then it was on 100 hard drives, and it just went everywhere. And so when I started organizing all my thoughts, it started making my thinking change. So the first thing that I would recommend doing is figure out exactly how you learn, how can you organize all of your information and knowledge, and then what you could start doing is just start off with YouTube videos that you really like. You can get YouTube videos, you can put them through like websites that allow you to transcribe, or you can get the transcription from it.
Yeah,
and then
it's automatically done on YouTube now. There's a transcription always on the side. Yeah.
Yes. So you get the transcription, and then you can put that into ChatGPT or Claude and then ask it different things. So get it to do the summary, just like you said, and then start saving and organizing those summaries because you will need them later.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're giving a gift to future you. Hey, I sorted it already. Here's the thing you need for this context of this application for what you're doing here. And you will thank yourself in a year when you start doing this every day, like posts, statuses, things. When people share really good and useful things, I copy posts and statuses all the time, and I put it into Milanote, I put it into Craft, I organize everything. And so it will get to a point where if you do this long enough, everything will start becoming Lego.
You'll never be short of ideas, concepts, ways to grow just by doing that.
And it will take a lifetime to build it, but it is so worth it, because when you start building this yourself and you're putting things and you're organizing it, your brain will start remembering where you're putting everything. And it adds that extra repetition. It adds context of where you're putting it next to other things, the folders and stuff. And so you're actually making a digital filing cabinet of your ideas, your concepts, your values, the things that are important to you. You will start to build that out, and you will have access to it quickly. It will actually make your brain better.
So you might potentially start thinking in more systems solely because the structure by which you save the data in a system is going to be more systemized.
Yes. You can find things faster because you organized it. You actually remember the concept easier. All of the different things I put for storytelling, I can see the whole board in my head already. I know where all the videos are. And so when you start thinking of ideas and you're like, oh, I need to write a thing about like this particular topic, you can just open it straight away, and then you have every single thing connected. It's worth it. And when you start doing that and start summarizing books, summarizing chapters, summarizing YouTube videos, that's when we can start really cooking. Because when you have all these summaries, you can start throwing them into Claude, as you said, and say, well, can I make something that has these 3 things in it? You just feed them into it, and then now it's like a blender. You can put all the ideas, give all the PDFs you've created, and then it will start like synthesizing all of it for you.
So it will be able to handle and condense more data than you would ever be able to, and you can take the best bits from it.
Yes, but you already have, because you collected the good stuff already. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I think moving forward, AI it's going to be massive. I mean, it already is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. Before we jump off, because we'll wrap up in about a minute or two, if you had to say pie in the sky, biggest picture,
yeah,
where do you think it goes? Ideal outcome and expected outcome.
Where will AI go? Because I'm reading so much about all these different things every day. I think we, as humans, are going to have to shift what we're doing because I don't think everyone's really paying as much attention to how fast this is moving. It's going to change my industry, video, and so it's scary in some ways, but also it's exciting because there's still time. There's still time to ride the wave. We still got time. We just have to jump on as soon as possible, because the tools are getting so much better where it's already making things really, really well, and it will eventually start coming down to how well can you think of ideas. It will be who has the best idea. Because the thing is with photography, and I'm a photographer, the level of photography and Midjourney and all these generative platforms that create images, the average is outstanding. Everything it creates is outstanding. And if you're a photographer and your average is 3 out of 10 when you're
not
trying,
going to be a photographer for much longer.
Yeah. So I think we need to do 2 things. We need to make sure that we are pushing for excellence in what we do, in as many things as possible, so then we can keep up with the average, but then also use those skills and our ability and our taste and our understanding of these things to make things that AI can't.
Yeah.
So what can you do that AI can't? And then what can AI do that you can't? So converse. So what can you do that AI can't? Focus on that. And what can AI do that you can't? Make sure you know that as well. And then what is something that you and AI can do that no one else can?
Where do they intersect? Yeah.
Yeah. Find the thing that when you use AI, no one can do, and do that.
I think that is the perfect place to leave it.
Awesome.
So amazing to have you on. Thank you. And I've no doubt this won't be the last.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
That was fun.